Do you need to do a bunch of cardio to maximize fat loss? So a common idea or common notion is that you have to increase your cardio and do a lot of cardio to get lean. Now I'm here to tell you that the context is really important. I do think cardio is good to have in your routine from a heart health and cardiovascular perspective. Now, do I think that it's required or needed for fat loss? I don't think you need it for fat loss. Yes, it can help, but the duration, the type of movement, and the stress levels of the movement will factor in. So it's a nuanced question. So I'm gonna break down the variables for you so you can make a better decision on if you need to add cardio to your routine to maximize your fat loss. So the first thing to realize is that there's different modalities of cardio. There is your low intensity, steady state cardio, or your LISS. And then there is HIIT, or high intensity interval training. You can do that as, it doubles as cardio, whether it be like using kettlebells or even sprints, things like that. And think of HIIT a bit like hitting the NOS button on your race car. You can only do it for short bursts of time, but it does create quite a potent metabolic effect. When it comes to maximizing the way your body uses HIIT to improve fat loss, is that doing some type of 6 to 10 minute HIIT training session at the end of a weight training workout can maximize fatty acid burning in your body. So basically, I'm just saying that if you weight train, putting the frosting on the cake is kind of like doing a little bit of HIIT at the very end of the workout. On the other hand, and you especially see this with a lot of people in the fitness space and bodybuilding, is that they'll typically do LISS, or low intensity steady state cardio. And usually what you'll find is that they might do some steady state cardio, whether it be with a treadmill or a bike or elliptical or step machine in the morning, and then they might separate their weight training and have their weight training in the evening, for example. That's a common thing that a lot of fitness people, bodybuilders do. Now, it just depends on how aggressively you want to diet. If you are someone who struggles to keep themselves in a calorie deficit and you just feel like you're hungry a lot, then you might need to add in more steady state cardio to get enough of a caloric burn to achieve the fat loss. If you're someone that can control themselves with their diet, you might be better with this minimum effective dose approach, which is kind of what I do. I've got a lot of control. And the main reason why I've got a lot of control is because I've absolutely dialed my nutrition in to make sure that I'm hitting all my micronutrient values. Very often, if you're getting extra cravings and you're feeling really hungry, sometimes it can be because you're in a massive calorie deficit, but other times it can be because your diet's patchy. You're missing things in your diet. Maybe you're low in magnesium or you're low in selenium, and your body is trying to send you signals saying, hey, you need to go out and we need this mineral, we need this vitamin to perform like normal function. And so if you're dealing with a lot of cravings, part of that is making sure that you're getting a lot of micronutrient-rich foods into your diet. Well, how does this relate to fat loss? Like I was saying, if you are struggling to control your hunger, you might need to have more micronutrient-dense foods into your diet, like broccoli sprouts, for example. Low in calories, really high in micronutrients and antioxidants. And this way, it brings down your cravings, so you're not fighting yourself the whole time, and you can maintain that calorie deficit easier, so you don't have to add in more cardio to burn the body fat. So it really depends on where you're at with your hunger levels. The thing to remember, and this is something that I've seen a lot of people struggle with, is that if you do too much high intensity interval training alongside weight training, sometimes that can actually increase your appetite. It actually drive up hunger. Now, that's really the last thing you want to have to contend with. You don't want to have to be fighting your hunger the whole time. So if you're someone that is adding in high intensity interval training and you're noticing that your appetite's starting to elevate, you might be better off doing low intensity steady state cardio instead to create less of a nervous system strain on your body and thus not as much of a pronounced hunger response. I go a step further and I like to do what's called intentional NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I know it's a mouthful, But basically what it means is it's just how much you move and fidget through the day. Fidgeting, you could almost say, is in part your step count. So if you wear a pedometer or some type of smart device that tracks your step count each day, look at where your steps are at. One of the most potent ways to increase your fat loss is by increasing your step count. A bonus with that is if you throw a weighted vest on as well. What I do each day is, outside of my weight training, when I'm out and I'm on calls, mastermind calls, client calls, I'm sending audio messages to some of my VIP students, I'll throw my 60-pound weighted vest on and I'll just walk. It's not super fast to the point where I'm losing my breath and I can't have a conversation. I'm sending audio messages and I'm listening and I'm on calls. So I'm multi-purposing that time that I would already be using to do those things, but I'm walking instead of sitting on my butt all day. Literally by adding that extra NEAT into my routine, I'm able to burn a lot more calories and maintain sub 10% level body fat all year round without even counting calories. Another important component to realize is that you cannot cardio your way to fat loss if your diet is not good. And another step beyond that is you need to be focusing on weight training, resistance training. Why? Because the resistance training and the muscle building is essentially what is going to raise your basal metabolic rate. Think of your basal metabolic rate a bit like how powerful the engine of your vehicle is, your metabolism. And so if you are someone that has a lot of muscle mass, that muscle really drives up metabolic rate. It means you burn a lot more calories while you're resting, while you're sleeping, just as a byproduct of you having more muscle mass. So if you're someone who's just doing cardio and you're just trying to restrict calories, but you are not weight training to raise your basal metabolic rate, you are cutting yourself short. Because what will happen as soon as you stop doing the cardio, the fat burning stops. The only way to create a heightened level of fat burning after the fact is through resistance training. You will have an elevated metabolic state for hours after training, and as you build more muscle mass, you're increasing the furnace of your metabolic engine so you burn more calories at rest, and that's how you start to tap into all those extra fat stores. So you need to prioritize your weight training, and you need to make sure that you're doing big compound lifts. The compound lifts are going to offer the best ROI or return on investment for your time. So things like deadlifts, squats, rows, pull-ups or pull-downs, dips, chest presses, overhead presses, lunges. Those are going to have the best metabolic effect on your body for fat burning. And the last concept to realize, and it's fundamental, is that you can do all the cardio in the world and you can do all the weight training in the world, but if you are not in some degree of caloric deficit for fat loss, you will not see fat loss. In fact, if you're eating in a surplus and you're doing an hour of cardio every day and an hour of weight training, you could still gain body fat if you're eating enough calories. And this goes back to another point of, even if you're doing intermittent fasting and you're eating in a 4-hour window and you're like, I don't know why I'm not losing weight, I'm fasting and I'm doing exercise and everything else. If you're eating enough calories in that little fasting window to put you in a surplus, it's gonna remove any benefit that the fasting or the cardio will ever provide you. So you cannot out-cardio your way to fat loss if your diet's not dialed in. So the fundamental thing to remember is raise your basal metabolic rate by doing more resistance training. Increase your NEAT through the day, or your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, rather than having to just increase allocated cardio on a machine in the gym. Get out and walk the dog. Get out and walk with your kids. Get out and walk while you're on calls and things. Use that time and multi-purpose it so you can get way more movement in without having to actually allocate it as training or movement. And if you are going to do high intensity interval training, do it at the end of your weight training sessions. But if it starts to spike your appetite and you're noticing you're getting a lot of cravings and you're fighting your hunger, remove it and do lower intensity stuff like the NEAT to get that caloric burn up so you can lose weight the most efficient way. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, if you do all these things and you can't sustain the result and you relapse and go backwards, it wasn't sustainable in the first place and it's not worth it. You need to build out systems in your life that allow you to achieve the level of fat loss that you want and you can sustain it.